Hello everyone. Am I audible? Am I audible to all of you? Kindly, am I audible to all of you? Kindly, kindly comment in the comment section. All right, dear students, I'm Namita Koranne and I welcome you all to this online learning platform that is being provided by India's largest online um, learning academy, that's Unacademy. As I told you, I'm Namita Koranne. Before we begin with our topics, I would like to introduce myself briefly to you. As I can see in the chat box, there are so many of you who already know me. There are so many who have joined, who are new students for me. So I welcome you all. Uh, I am I'm Masters in Biomedical Technology, and I've also done B.Ed. I'm a very passionate teacher. I'm after my students so that by hook or crook they learn whatever I teach them. And I'm in this field for past 16 years. So I'm teaching students like you who are NEET aspirants for more than a decade. And it has been a very nice journey so far. And I really feel proud that I'm one of the reasons for them to clear the exams. All right. So that's a brief introduction about myself. Uh, Quickly, let me tell you the topic that we are going to learn today is breathing and exchange of gases. I hope I am audible to each and every one of you. Uh, Breathing and exchange of gases is a part of NCERT 11th curriculum. It's a part of NEET examination also. And I have divided the entire topic into 2 to 3 sessions. So in this first session, we are going to learn about human respiratory system, a kind of introduction to it, a kind of introduction to some of the terms which are very much needed to know. And believe me, when you write exam, each and every line of the NCERT you need to learn by heart, and sometimes you need to learn in between the lines also. You need to understand the exact meaning. What does the sentence says? So this is a small animation for you. This is the part that we are going to learn today, right? Okay. Now, before we begin with our sessions, I would like to tell you a few benefits of learning online. As you all know that we are going through a major pandemic and we have not seen such situations. So the online learning platform like this, what Unacademy has provided, is really, really essential and beneficial for those students who cannot go out and attend their classes. So Unacademy provides classes on the YouTube. It also has its own app, and you can check out for the lectures over there also. There are so many expert educators who are really expert in their own fields, and they guide you through this entire path. All right. Okay. Now, now these are some of the educators, and they have done a great job in their own careers, and they are here to guide you. So you must feel privileged that they are there to help you out. Why would you go for an academy? A few simple reasons. There are flexible schedules, there are live lectures. If you miss out on the live lectures, you can always go for the recorded sessions, which are also available. Then you can select the language of your choice. Like right now you're listening to me for NEET UG in English. So you can select the language of your own choice, and you get a lot of practice sheets also once you get enrolled to Unacademy. Uh, and believe me, you don't feel like that you are sitting isolated at home. I know you are all and you wish to come out, but when here the live chats are going on, you feel as if you are listening to this lecture or attending this discussion right from your own house, from your comfort couch, but you're still not alone. You're with all the other students who are listening and learning with you. There are interactive polls also. If you go to Educator's app and listen to the lectures over there, if educator asks you any questions, you can even promptly answer those questions by interactive poll. So it's magnificent. As I told you, there are so many mock tests available, very, very relevant to the topics that you learn, or which are really important for you for NEET examinations. So all those test papers will be available to you once you get enrolled with Unacademy. How to go for the Unacademy app? You can just install it from the App Store, or it's just on your fingertips. Okay, the important part for the subscriptions, there are large number of subscriptions available, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. But believe me, students, it takes 2 years to understand the entire process, and the syllabus of the NEET is such that you have to spend 2 years on it. So it's always beneficial to go for 12 months or 24 months course, but otherwise it's up to your choice. And if you use my subscription code, which is rightly seen on your screen, NAMYT, then you get 10% additional discount. All right. All right. So my dear friends, we begin with one of the most important topics, the breathing and exchange of gases. All right. Okay. Now, let me tell you one thing, that few people consider breathing as respiration. And in these first few slides, we are going to learn that they are not the same. All right. So when we talk about breathing, breathing is simple process of inhalation and exhalation of air. When you inhale the air, when you exhale the air, that simple process is known as breathing. All right. Now here, uh, as you can see that uh, it occurs at the level of lungs. I've written this because we are going to majorly learn about the uh, human respiratory system. That is why. All right. So uh, if it had been any other animal, then it will change. For example, if we talk about the sponges, simple animals, then it would be at their body surface, right? But the process of inhalation and exhalation of air is known as breathing. Breathing is part of respiration, but breathing itself is not respiration. All right. Now, breathing is a physical process. Physical as in it's not a biochemical process. It does not involve any breakdown or makeup. All right, which means that breathing doesn't break down anything. It doesn't make up any new molecule. It is simple diffusion of air. Right. Now, stages of breathing. Inhalation, that is intake of air, and here oxygen. Exhalation, that is removal of foul air, that is carbon dioxide. Always remember as a note that under normal condition, inhalation is an active process. It requires ATP, and exhalation is a passive process. Now, what do you mean by an active or a passive process? Is active is the one that uses energy. So when you're inhaling the air, you're actually using the energy in the form of ATP. All right, you're filling up your lungs, the thoracic cavity, with the air. That process is active. It requires ATP. But when you're exhaling the air out, it does not require ATP. It's as simple as that, that you have a string in your hand, a spiral string, and a kind of a spring, and you're stretching it. Now the stretching requires energy, but when you simply leave it, it comes back to its normal position. So under a normal condition, I'm not talking about that you are forcefully inhaling or forcefully exhaling. Under a normal condition, when you are doing some work, you are listening to this video, you are writing, under such condition you do not stop breathing. The breathing is still going on. In such situation, inhalation is an active process, but exhalation is just a recoil. That spring or that thoracic cavity which has expanded will automatically come back to its normal by exhalation. All right. So inhalation is an active process, exhalation is a passive process. Fine. Now, respiration. As I told you that breathing is different from respiration. Then what is respiration? This oxygen that is going through your lungs to blood and finally to the cells. And the cells are using this oxygen to produce energy. That is known as respiration. All right. So breathing can be considered as a part of respiration. I would like to show you out here. See, the exchange of gases, this part. Now this is breathing part. But oxidation of food is exclusively respiration part. So respiration involves both. It involves exchange of gases also, and it also involves oxidation of food. So that oxygen that has entered your body will be used to produce energy. Now here, respiration is a physiochemical process and it is a catabolic process. Remember, for breathing, I had told you it's a physical process. But respiration is a physiochemical process. It's a catabolic process. So if I have to kind of give differences between two, breathing. Breathing is a physical process. Respiration is a physiochemical process. Breathing only involves exchange of gases. Respiration involves exchange of gases and oxidation of food also. And on the top of it, respiration is a catabolic process. Now, if you try to remember what, or you memorize what you have learned about the biochemical process, the anabolic process and the catabolic process. Anabolic are the ones where you make up something, whereas catabolic are the ones where you break up a molecule. So here it's a breakdown process. It's a catabolic process because oxidation of food is going on. All right. Okay. Now respiration has got 3 stages. Let us see how. All right. So all the 3 stages are right in front of you. They are external respiration, internal respiration, and cellular respiration. External respiration is the one that occurs at the level of lungs if we talk about human beings or the mammals or the birds or reptiles for that matter. But if we talk about the pisces or we talk about the lower animals, then at their organ of exchange, right? So external respiration is the one that takes place at the level of organ which is involved in the respiration. And what is the function of this? Now this is breathing. So if anyone asks you what is external respiration, simply external respiration is breathing or ventilation. What is external respiration? External respiration is breathing or ventilation. That's it. All right. So in the maths, when we learn about the subset, so respiration involves breathing. All right. That way you can remember. Okay, now internal respiration. How is it different from that? Internal respiration is the exchange of gases that take place between blood and cells. So here from the lungs, the oxygen has entered into the blood. From the blood, it has to enter into the cells. So when oxygen finally enters into its own destination, that is cells, this is known as internal respiration. Once again, when oxygen finally enters into its destination, that is cells, that is known as internal respiration. So the exchange that takes place between blood and cells is known as internal respiration. And finally, the cellular respiration. Now this oxygen which has entered the cells, it is used for the oxidation of food or glucose, that is known as cellular respiration. So you have three stages of respiration. Number one, external respiration at the level of lungs. Number two, internal respiration, which occurs between the blood and the cells. And number three, cellular respiration, which involves oxidation of food, and it takes place in the cell. And which organelle is involved? Let me see if anyone can comment in the chat box. Yes, it is mitochondria. All right. Now, let us, with the help of a flowchart, try to understand what actually happens. This is atmospheric oxygen. This air enters your lungs. From the lungs, it enters into the blood, and blood carries it to each and every cell of the body, right? So, the atmospheric oxygen from lungs to blood, that is known as external respiration. From blood to cells is known as internal respiration. Inside a cell, it goes to the mitochondria, and mitochondria combines it with glucose to make ATP and carbon dioxide. Now this part is cellular respiration. This part is cellular respiration. All right. So external respiration, lungs and blood. Internal respiration, blood and cell. And cellular respiration in the mitochondria of the cell, where you get ATP and carbon dioxide. Now this ATP will be used for a number of biological processes that take place in our body. All right. Now, one very important aspect, whenever we take any physiology lecture, you have learned animals in animal kingdoms also, right? And you have learned their physiological organs also, like whether they have heart or not, if they have heart, whether it is how many chambered, etc. So those things in each chapter you have to revise with me. So this is a chart. Here we go. All right. So we have got two columns, phylums and respiratory organs. Phylum, you have to always begin from the lowest of the phylum, and we come to the highest in the group, that is mammals. All right. So the lowest phylum, Porifera, sponges. Then ciliated, that is Hydra, platyhelminths, ascahelminths, right? Now these animals, they are lower phylum. They do not have any evolved organ for exchange. They use their body surface for the exchange, right? So in the examination, if any question that is asked from this area, it could be considered from this chapter also, it could be considered from the animal kingdom also. So remember, all the lower animals, Porifera, ciliated, platyhelminths, ascahelminths, they respire, rather breathe through their body surface because they do not have any elaborate system for the exchange. When we go to annelids, one of the important example is earthworm. Now earthworm is I'm pretty sure all of you have seen earthworm. Earthworm has cuticle. Its cuticle, the outermost moist skin that we may call, that's responsible for respiration. So for annelids, example, the earthworm, you have cuticle as their respiratory organ. Okay, now moving on to the next phylum, arthropods. Now, arthropods, as you know, is the largest animal phylum. So all the weird kind of animals, and if you are afraid, I'm sure many of you are afraid of those tiny insects and cockroaches, right? So they all belong to arthropods, and it's a largest kingdom. I'm so sorry, it's the largest phylum of the animal kingdom. Now, arthropods. If arthropods are terrestrial, we can take example as cockroach because that's widely discussed in NCERT also. So this cockroach has spiracles. That system is known as tracheal system. So on the side of the body side of the cockroach, there are small tiny holes through which the air enters, and the foul air also follows back from the same holes. Those tiny holes are called spiracles, and the system is known as tracheal system. Remember very carefully. But if this arthropod happens to be aquatic, right, there are arthropods which are aquatic also. I'm sure you must be recalling the names now, right? And if possible, write down a few examples in the chat box also, which are the aquatic arthropods. They have gills. They have gills. So you have to remember that in this particular phylum arthropod, if it's a terrestrial, spiracles. If it's aquatic, gills. All right. Moving on to the next, mollusks. Mollusks like Unio, Pila, and a number of them, they have gills. They have gills. Then next, echinoderms. Echinoderms, the starfish, one of the most important example, or the example that you immediately recall, that starfish. Echinoderms have tube feet. They have tube feet. And that's not the only, some of them have dermal brachia also, right? So they have tube feet or dermal brachia. Pisces, the fish, they have gills. Pisces have gills. Any exception to this? Any exception to this? Yes, I can imagine some of you loudly saying lungfish. Right, that's an exception, right? Please remember, lungfish, that's Pisces phylum, but it has lungs. That is why it's named lungfish. Okay, moving on to the next phylum, amphibians. Now, amphibians, if it's an amphibian larvae, consider frog as an example. The larvae of the frog will respire through gills. The larvae of the frog will respire through gills. The adults will respire through lungs or moist skin. You can imagine that they have a slimy, moist skin. That's very preferable for the gaseous exchange, and it is richly supplied with blood vessels. So the adults of the amphibians have lungs, and they also have moist skin. All right. Now, such respiration, which always takes place through skin, is known as cutaneous respiration. Please remember, the respiration that takes place, rather the exchange, the breathing that takes place through skin is known as cutaneous. All right. Moving ahead with the top phylums. So, reptiles, aves, and mammals, they all have lungs. They all have lungs. Now, when you look at this comparative study, you will understand that starting from porifera, which are simplest of the animals, and moving to the mammals, they are the most well-developed, advanced animals on the earth. You'll see that the organ of exchange has also evolved. So all these things not only help you to understand this particular chapter, but will help you to revise the animal kingdom and will help you to understand evolution. That is part of 12th NCERT. All right. Okay. So now moving ahead. All right. So, anatomy of human respiratory system. Let us now study the anatomy. So, my future doctors, before you bisect or dissect a human body as a professional doctor, you have to learn through the diagrams, and this is the human respiratory system for you. All right, it's easy to understand. Just follow your breath, you will understand where does the flow of air goes to, but we will learn it part by part. All right, now this is the entry point of the air for us. That's our nose, and most precisely these are nostrils. All right, so air enters through nostrils and it finally comes to this common passage. Can you see that this is the passage of air, but mouth is also opening, and this is the passage of food. So finally air and food, for some time they are in a common passage. All right, now this passage is known as pharynx. So air enters through nose, that is nostrils. It passes through the nasal cavity and enters into the pharynx. From the mouth, while you're speaking, the mouth is open. While you're eating, the mouth is open. The food and sometimes air also flows through it. And the food and the air have finally a common passage for a very short duration. And that common passage is pharynx here. All right. After that, the air has to go toward its own destination, and food will enter into the esophagus. In this particular diagram, what you are seeing is the windpipe portion. So air from the pharynx will enter into the windpipe, and the first part of the windpipe is larynx. Now here, at the junction of the larynx and pharynx, there is a small opening. That opening is called glottis, and it is covered with a cartilage flap, epiglottis. We'll learn about this more in the larynx. All right. So air is traveling from nose. It has come to pharynx. Then it will enter into the windpipe. The first part is larynx, but at the junction of pharynx and larynx, that is somewhere over here, there is an opening. That opening is known as glottis, which is covered by epiglottis. So while you are chewing your food and swallowing your food, you must not speak. The whole idea is, if you try to speak, you're opening the glottis. That epiglottis opens up, and food particles, tiny food particles, try to enter into your windpipe, which is not allowed by the body, and that is how you start coughing. So when an elderly person says that when you are swallowing your food, you must not talk, they are absolutely right. This is a reason for that. That aperture glottis is covered by epiglottis, and while you want to talk, you want to open the epiglottis, and the food particles enter into your windpipe, and they may choke up. All right. Okay. Now this is larynx. This is also known as sound box, and we are going to learn all this in we'll have a brief account of all of them one by one in the upcoming slides. All right. So from the larynx, the air enters into this tube. Now this tube is known as trachea. From the larynx, it enters into this tube. The tube is known as trachea. And you can see the trachea is covered. It is covered by cartilage. We'll discuss all these things in the upcoming slides. The trachea then bifurcates into two tubes. Can you see that? Trachea has bifurcated into two tubes. Now these two tubes are known as bronchi. And these tubes further bifurcate inside the lungs into many tiny tubules. So from the word bronchi, we finally start calling them bronchioles. All right. So starting from the nose, goes to the pharynx, to the larynx, trachea. Trachea bifurcates in the bronchi. Bronchi bifurcates, and you get the last part of the bronchi, which now we term as bronchiole, and right next to the bronchiole, where bronchioles end, there is a cluster of sac-like structure that is known as alveoli. So actual exchange of gases take place over here at the level of alveoli. The actual exchange is taking place over here. All the other parts are mere for exchange, for bringing up the air over here. The actual exchange takes place at the level of the alveoli. All right. Now this is the right lung. This is the left lung, and we will discuss about their coverings, etc., in our upcoming slides. All right. Below the lungs, there is a muscular band, very thick, and that band is known as diaphragm. All right. Now, this is actually when you breathe in or breathe out, that's the major function of diaphragm. Diaphragm is usually dome shaped, but when you breathe in, it becomes flat. When you breathe out, it again becomes dome shaped. But we'll learn all these things in our upcoming slides. I hope this much is clear to you. If at all you have any doubts till now, you can write those doubts in the chat box. All right. Okay, so we move ahead. All right, now we finally begin with human respiratory system. Right now, you know that when an embryo is formed, that embryo has got three layers: ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm. And all the different organs of our body are eventually formed from those three layers. What are the three layers? Ectoderm, mesoderm, endoderm. Innermost is endo, middle layer is meso, and the outermost is ecto. So this particular system, when we talk about human respiratory system, it is formed from endomesodermal in origin, which means some of the part is endodermal and some of the part is mesodermal. All right. So human respiratory system is endomesodermal in origin, which means some parts are derived from the endoderm of the embryo, some parts are derived from the mesoderm of the embryo. All right. Now the part of the human respiratory system, the diagram that we have just now seen will describe each and every part related to your syllabus. All right. Now the first part is known as nose. All right. Now nose, in this diagram you can see this is the nose, and this is the external part from where the air gets in, this part, right? So this part is known as nostrils or nares. Now it is but obvious that if you have nares in the front, you must have an opening at the back also. You cannot keep this closed, otherwise where the air will glow. So which means that the nostrils are present on the exterior end also and on the interior end also. The external ones are known as external nostrils. External nostrils. The inner one, which are just above the pharynx, are known as internal nostrils. So there are two pair of nostrils, two external nostrils, two internal nostrils. This condition of having two nostrils is known as dirhinus. The condition of having two nostrils is known as dirhinus. I'm sure you have learned the animal kingdom, and there you would have seen this, that not all the animals have two nostrils. Now imagine an animal without two nostrils, having just one nostril. All right, so what have we learned? There are two pairs of nostrils. They are external and internal. All right, now these two pairs themselves are also separated with the help of a septum. Nasal septum separates the two nostrils. All right, now in between the two nostrils, these are the two nostrils, external and internal. In between there is this passage. This passage is known as nasal passage. Some books also refer to it as nasal cavity. That's one and the same. Now this entire nasal passage, which you cannot see, has got very important functions to perform. Let us see what. The entire passage is divided into three parts: anterior, respiratory, and olfactory. So this is an anterior part. These three are respiratory part, and the last part is olfactory part. We'll learn briefly about them also. The anterior nasal passage, immediately after the external nostrils. It has got fold of skin, it has got hair, it also has got mucus producing glands. Those glands are known as Bowman's glands. All right. Now, I'm sure you have all seen this. Folds of the skin right next to your external nails. There are hair also. Now, the reason for hair is to trap the dust particles. And then there are Bowman's gland to produce mucus. So that also traps the foreign particles, the bacteria, etc. And then there is sebaceous gland also in this particular region, so that it becomes oily. The oil is secreted all over the surface and there is no fungal growth over there. All right. So this part, the first part of the nasal passage, is known as anterior part. It is also known as vestibule. So some books also refer to it as anterior vestibule. All right. What things does it have? It has folds of skin. It has hair to prevent the entry of the dust particles and the large foreign objects. It has Bowman's gland. Bowman's gland is nothing but the mucus secreting gland to trap the dust, dirt, what is entering through your nose. And sebaceous gland also, that secretes the oil, keep it lubricated and prevent the growth of the fungus. All right. Now, this part. Can you see these three line or the wavy things that's present in the diagram? Now, this particular part is a respiratory passage, right? What is respiratory passage? You're sitting in an AC where the temperature might be 24 degrees centigrade, but we always know that our body optimum temperature is 37 degrees centigrade. So the air that's going inside your body is 24 degrees centigrade. Your body is used to, or its hemostasis is adjusted to 37 degrees centigrade. Something should be done about it. No? Such cold air cannot enter directly your lungs. So what happens? That air, while passing from here, in this particular region, there are three bones. Those bones are known as concave. What are they known as? Concave. Where are they present? In the respiratory passage of nasal passage or nasal cavity. So these three bones are known as concave. Now concave are superior concave, the one which is present on the top, middle concave and inferior concave. About these concave, you will learn more in the topic locomotion and movement. They are described very well over there. But this is the place where they are present. So respiratory passage has three bones which are known as concave, superior, middle and inferior. Now some part of the concave show outgrowth. That outgrowth is known as turbinals, right? And in those turbinals, very minute fine blood capillaries are present. So blood capillaries actually warm the air. So air that you're breathing in, the one that finally reaches out to lung, is maintained at a particular temperature. It is not what you are breathing. It maintains the temperature, right? So where does this happen? This happens at the respiratory passage. Respiratory passage is a part of nasal passage. Respiratory passage has three bones: superior concave, middle concave, inferior concave. These concave show spiral outgrowth. Now these are the bony structure. Bony structures, as you know, they are very stiff. So any blood vessel to reach out to them is not possible. So these structures show a spiral outgrowth, and in that outgrowth, blood vessels are present. Those outgrowths are known as turbinals. So these and in these spinal outgrowths, there are blood vessels which actually warms the air. Now, the kind of lining of the epithelium that you have over here is very peculiar. It's pseudo, stratified, columnar, ciliated, glandular epithelium. So we abbreviate it as PSCCGE, right? Once again, pseudo stratified, columnar, ciliated glandular epithelium. Pseudo-stratified means it gives appearance of being multilayer, but it is not. The cells are columnar, the cells are ciliated, and the cells are glandular. They are gland cells. All right. So it is PSCCGE. Please remember this abbreviation and the full form also. All right. Now the last part. Suppose if you are present in a room where someone has just used an incense stick or has sprayed some perfume, the moment you inhale, you can recognize the aroma, right? Now that's because this last part of the nasal passage has got nerve endings, and this is olfactory passage. That membrane which has receptors, olfactory receptors, is known as Schneiderian membrane. It's known as Schneiderian membrane. It's olfactory. Now all these are also mentioned in the topic neural control and coordination, wherein you learn about the sensory organs as well. But we try to merge up all these things over here also. So finally, when you learn there, you at the back of your mind, you realize that you have learned all these things before also. All right. Okay. So the nasal passage is divided into three parts. What are they? Anterior, respiratory, olfactory. Anterior is the first part, respiratory and olfactory are middle and the second. And remember one more thing, that respiratory passage and olfactory passage are together also known as posterior passage. So this is anterior passage. These two together are called posterior passage. Is that clear to everyone? All right. Can we recall those three bones? The three bones are known as concave, superior concave, middle concave, inferior concave, lined by pseudo-stratified columnar ciliated glandular epithelium. Function: warms the air. Whatever you are inhaling is not directly reaching up to lungs, it is getting warmed in between. Very important aspect. All right. And olfactory, you are able to recognize the aroma or the smell. That's because this olfactory passage has Schneiderian membrane, that's olfactory. And here are connected your olfactory nerves, which takes the message to brain, and then the brain tells you what are you smelling. All right. So three important things: Bowman's gland, part of anterior, produces mucus. Lining of respiratory passage, pseudo-stratified columnar ciliated glandular epithelium, abbreviated as PSCCGE, and olfactory passage has Schneiderian membrane. Right? Okay, so we move ahead. All right. Now, after the nose, the next part where the air enters, if you remember our diagram, and I have a diagram over here also, is pharynx. So this is the nose, external nostrils, nasal passage, internal nostrils, and this particular part is pharynx. This particular part is pharynx. All right. Now the region where internal nares open in the pharynx, that pharynx is known as nasopharynx. The region where nose internally opens, the nose is opening internally into your throat, that region is known as nasopharynx. All right. The common passage for both air and food is known as oropharynx. The common passage is known as oropharynx. And finally, the bifurcation where the in the front there is windpipe and at the back there is esophagus. So windpipe and esophagus are placed like this. In front it is windpipe, at the back there is esophagus. So at that bifurcation part is known as laryngopharynx. All right. So pharynx is divided into three: nasopharynx, oropharynx, laryngopharynx. Nasopharynx, where internal nares open, that is nasopharynx. The common passage for both air and food right after nasopharynx is oropharynx. And bifurcation, the food has to go into the esophagus, the wind has to enter into the windpipe. That bifurcating part is known as laryngopharynx. Is that okay? All right. Now, can you see this opening? This opening was glottis. This is the one that I was mentioning previously. This is glottis, and it is covered by a flap which is known as epiglottis. This is glottis. It is covered by a flap which is known as epiglottis. So when you are breathing, epiglottis is open, allows air to directly enter into the windpipe. And the first part of the windpipe is larynx, followed by trachea. Okay, so three part of pharynx: nasopharynx, oropharynx, laryngopharynx. Alright, tell me which is a part which will have only air, no food. No food can go up to there, not normally at least. Yes, yes, yes. I can see some of you are remembering what was taught earlier. It's nasopharynx. So in the examination, if you are called, if you're asked that the part of the pharynx which is only the passage of air and no food, it's nasopharynx. All right. Okay. Fine. Now we come to the part of our business. That is, we have entered into the windpipe. So through nose, you have entered into the pharynx, and now you have finally entered into the windpipe. This is the first part of the windpipe. It is known as larynx. The first part of the windpipe is known as larynx. Larynx is also known as voice box or sound box. What is it known as? Voice box or sound box. I'm able to deliver this lecture because the voice box is right now working fine. All right. Larynx is made up of cartilages. Larynx is made up of cartilages. There are actually 9 cartilages, but in your syllabus, all the 9 names are not there. In fact, some of the names which I have discussed over here, some of them are also not there, but otherwise you will not follow entire thing. So there are few things that few extra things that I am describing over here. All right, once again, larynx, voice box, also known as sound box. It is made up of cartilages, and these are the cartilages that we are going to learn now. Now, anterior view. If you are looking at the larynx from front, now this is the anterior view. If you back open a person's neck and try to look from the rear end, this is the posterior view. These are the parts of the larynx from the anterior view, and this is from the posterior view. All right, let us look at the anterior view. Now, as I told you, larynx is the first part of the windpipe, and next to larynx is trachea. So this is larynx, bits and pieces, because there are other things also present. Now, can you see this part? This is epiglottis. Yes, epiglottis covers which aperture? Glottis. Absolutely. Epiglottis, that covers glottis. So epiglottis is made up of cartilage and it is part of larynx. All right, epiglottis. After epiglottis, can you see this part? This large part. Now this is thyroid cartilage. Thyroid cartilage because it is protecting the thyroid membrane also, and it is present close to it, so it is known as thyroid cartilage. Can you see it's very broad, right? Okay, now this broad cartilage is thyroid cartilage. It is the largest of all the 9 cartilages of larynx. Larynx is made up of cartilages. There are total 9 cartilages, out of which one we had learnt, epiglottis, which is flap-like. The next is thyroid cartilage. Thyroid cartilage is the largest cartilage. It is dorsally incomplete, which means if this is the thyroid cartilage and this is windpipe, it is present like this, dorsally incomplete. It's not present at the back. It's present only in the front. So ventrally it is present, but dorsally it is incomplete. And this is also known as Adam's apple in case of males. Males, when they approach the puberty, because of the hormonal changes, there is an outgrowth in this cartilage which appears as Adam's apple in their throat region, right? So three things to remember very clearly. Thyroid cartilage I am talking about. Don't get confused with thyroid gland. It's a thyroid cartilage which is part of larynx. It's the largest cartilage. It is dorsally incomplete and it shows an outgrowth in boys during puberty, which is known as Adam's apple. All right. So the movement of Adam's apple while someone is speaking, that's because this has outgrown. All right. Okay. Now, right next to thyroid cartilage, can you see this? This cartilage is known as cricoid cartilage. All right. It is known as cricoid cartilage. Now, cricoid cartilage, dorsally it is broad. It is dorsally broad. But when it comes to the ventral side, it becomes narrow. So it is just opposite of thyroid cartilage. Thyroid cartilage ventrally is complete, dorsally incomplete. Cricoid cartilage, dorsally it is full and ventrally it becomes narrow. I cannot say it's incomplete, but it becomes narrow. All right. Okay. One very, very important thing, that epiglottis, thyroid cartilage and cricoid, they are unpaired, which means in the larynx, they are present only one. You have one epiglottis, you cannot have two. You have one thyroid cartilage and you have one cricoid cartilage, which means they are not present in pair, which also means that there are some things which are present in pair. That is why I am giving this comparison to you, right? So please remember, see, unpaired, thyroid, cricoid and epiglottis, they are unpaired cartilages of larynx. Larynx is your voice box. They are seen very clearly in the anterior view. If you flip the larynx, this is the back view that's available to you. That's a posterior view, right? Now look at the posterior view. Again, you can see epiglottis from the posterior view also, because that's just a flap. So can be seen from both the ends. All right. Now there are two important cartilages which can be seen only in the posterior view. Can you see this conical kind of a thing? This, can you see that they are in pair? There are two such structures. Now this is known as arytenoid cartilage. This is known as arytenoid cartilage. See, on the posterior side, there are conical shaped structures. They are two in pair. They are known as arytenoid cartilage. The tip of the arytenoid cartilage has a sphere-like structure which is known as corniculate cartilage. The tip of the arytenoid, can you see this tip part? The tip of the arytenoid has spherical structure that is known as corniculate cartilage. Some books have also mentioned it as Santeroni cartilage. Right? Now remember, this is the smallest. So corniculate is smallest, thyroid is largest. Needless to mention, arytenoid is paired, corniculate is also paired. But in the beginning of this particular topic, larynx, I told you that there are 9. But if we count, these are only 2 plus 2, 4 and 3 over here, 7. There is one more which is known as cuneiform, which is club shaped and present somewhere over here. But that is out of scope of your syllabus, so we're not going to go into those many details. You just remember that on anterior view, you could see epiglottis, thyroid cartilage, cricoid. All the three of them are unpaired. But if you flip the larynx, you can see two more. They are corniculate, arytenoid. Arytenoid is again pseudo-stratified epithelium. Please remember this word. It's going to be used quite often. All right. Remember, we had used this word with the nasal passage also. In the conchae, they were lined by pseudo-stratified. This is also lined by pseudo-stratified epithelium. So it's tube-like. The length is 12 centimeter, reaches up to mid-thoracic region at the level of which vertebrae? 5th vertebrae. All right. So questions could be asked regarding this. At which particular vertebral region does the trachea reach up to? It reaches up to 5th vertebrae. What is that area? It's mid-thoracic region. All right. What it is lined by? It is lined by pseudo-stratified epithelium. Pseudo means which gives a false appearance of being multi-layered, but it is actually single layer. All right. Now, one very important aspect. It is covered by C-shaped cartilaginous rings. All right. So that tube-like structure, this tube-like structure is covered by C-shaped cartilage. Why C-shaped? So that dorsally they are not complete. They do not touch each other dorsally. It's present only ventrally. That's because this is just the tube-like structure. From where will it get strength to remain upright? It has to remain upright all the time, lifelong, till your last breath. All right. So this trachea has to be protected. Now at the back, it has got some protection from the vertebral column. Vertebral column is there, so it's providing it the kind of posture that it should have. But in front, if these cartilages are not holding it up, it may collapse down. All right. So trachea is a tube-like structure. That tube-like structure is 12 centimeters in length and it is covered by C-shaped cartilage. Those C-shaped cartilage, if you actually count it in numbers, ranges between 16 to 21 depending upon the length of the neck that the person has. All right. So one important feature, C-shaped cartilage, they are incomplete cartilaginous rings. They are made up of which cartilage? Hyaline cartilage. Again, which cartilage? Hyaline cartilage. Which side are they present? Only on the ventral side. Right? They are absent on the dorsal side. Then what is present? Some involuntary muscles are present on the dorsal side. Right? Now, this particular thing is out of scope of your syllabus. I've just mentioned it to give it a complete thing. Otherwise, you will always imagine that it's empty from the back. It's not like that. This is trachea covered by C-shaped cartilage, and those C-shaped cartilage are not complete. They are C-shaped. That is why they are named C-shaped. All right. And on the dorsal side, there are involuntary muscles. So here there are involuntary muscles. Reason? They keep the trachea intact. In the absence of the air, the trachea might fall down. This should not happen. All right. And at the level of fifth vertebrae, it bifurcates into bronchi. So it extends from larynx to bronchi. What does it look like? Tube-like. How many centimeters in length? Approximately 12 centimeters in length. Reaches up to mid-thoracic region. Precisely fifth vertebrae. It's lined by pseudo-stratified epithelium. It is covered ventrally by C-shaped cartilage rings. They are C-shaped, they are incomplete, and they are made up of hyaline cartilage. Only on the ventral side, not on the dorsal side. On the dorsal side, some involuntary muscles are present. All right, and at the level of fifth vertebrae, it bifurcates into two more tubes. Those two tubes are known as bronchi. Right? All right. Okay, now bronchi. The trachea has brought the air has reached up to bronchi, and from bronchi it is going to enter into the lungs. Let us see. The first bronchi is primary bronchi. Okay? The second one, secondary. Third, tertiary. Fourth, pulmonary. Fifth, terminal. And last, respiratory. Are you getting this? Now here it should be only bronchi. It's bronchi. Primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi. All right. Pulmonary bronchi, terminal bronchi. These all have cartilaginous rings. So remember, the trachea has cartilage rings. Those rings do not, they do not stop to exist once the trachea stops and bifurcates into bronchi. They still continue up to which level? Terminal bronchioles. So those cartilage rings which the trachea has, the trachea bifurcates into bronchi. Bronchi will still have those rings, and bronchi further bifurcates into primary, secondary, tertiary, pulmonary, terminal. Up to terminal bronchioles you have cartilaginous rings. So which bronchioles do not have cartilaginous rings? That's only the last one, respiratory bronchioles. Is that okay? Let us try to learn it with the help of a diagram. This is trachea. This is somewhere fifth vertebrae, and it has bifurcated into two. Can you see? Two branches. Now this is one lung. This has to be another lung. I've shown it for one lung, the right lung. So primary bronchi. Can you see this is primary bronchi? It bifurcated into secondary bronchi. Secondary bronchi bifurcated into tertiary bronchi. Tertiary bronchi bifurcated into pulmonary. Now from here onwards we start using the word bronchioles. So this I have deliberately written bronchioles. They are actually bronchi, right? Primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi. Tertiary bronchi bifurcates into pulmonary bronchioles. Pulmonary bronchioles bifurcates into terminal bronchioles. Terminal bronchioles finally bifurcate and form a cluster of respiratory bronchi. Can you see at the level of respiratory bronchi there are no cartilage ring, whereas on all the other, right from primary bronchi till terminal bronchioles, I've shown cartilage ring. Is that clear? Here everywhere you will have cartilage ring except the last part, bronchioles will not have. If you look at these parameters, you don't have to mug them up. You don't have to remember the diameter of each and every bronchial or bronchiole. This is just for your comparatively analysis, that as you go down and as they keep on bifurcating, their diameter keeps on narrowing down. Remember, you don't have to mug these data. You just need to know that after terminal bronchioles, the respiratory bronchioles do not have cartilage, C-shaped cartilage, and this is how they move. Primary bronchi, secondary, tertiary, pulmonary, terminal, and respiratory bronchioles. All right. So you can say primary bronchi are the widest, and respiratory bronchioles, they go to the level of just being one cell thick wall. They are just one cell thick walls. All right. So this comparative study just shows you that as they are bifurcating, their diameter is narrowing down. So this is important for the exchange of gases. Otherwise, the gases will not be able to exchange. Is that okay to everyone? Anywhere where you want anything to be repeated or any doubts, please do write in the chat box. Okay, shall we move ahead? All right. Now, just one thing. See, in this particular slide, can you see this cluster, grape-like cluster? This is alveoli. So your air has started from nose to pharynx to larynx to trachea to bronchioles, and finally to this cluster of this grape-like cluster, which is alveoli. So the next part that we are going to learn is alveoli. All right. So the image that you see over here, I have magnified it over here. This is the magnified version of the alveoli. Is that okay? All right. Now let us learn about the alveoli. Alveoli, that's the last part. It is the part which is responsible for the gaseous exchange. So final exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide is taking place at the level of alveoli. Alveoli, as you can see, it is sac-like. Can you see this part? It's a sac-like. And just above a sac-like region, there is a small duct. So we divide our alveoli into two parts. A duct part, a sac part. What are the two parts? A duct part and a sac part. This part is a sac part. This is the duct part. The duct part of all of the alveoli, they cluster together and finally open into the respiratory bronchioles, and then that continues. All right. We are more interested in this final part, which is a sac part. Now, sac part, its inner lining is made up of simple squamous epithelium. We had been talking about pseudo stratified for so long. Now it has changed to simple squamous epithelium. Can anyone tell me the reason? Simple. Simple squamous has a simple reason. Simple as in it's just single layer of cells. Being single layer of cells, its thickness rather, it has become very thick. The cells of squamous are flattened. They are not like column or a cube. They are flattened. So they help in the exchange of the gases, right? So the inner lining of the sac, if you can see this inner lining of the sac, is made up of simple squamous epithelium. These cells are also known as pneumocytes. The cells are also known as pneumocytes. What kind of cells are they? They are simple squamous epithelium cells. Where are they present? Inner lining of sac of alveoli. So these simple squamous epithelium, the cells are known as pneumocytes. There are three types of pneumocytes. 1, 2, and 3. Type 1. If we talk about type 1 pneumocytes, squamous cell, but what function do they perform? They are the most abundant. They are present in large number, in the large percentage with respect to the rest of the two. And they are the one which actually help in the exchange. The actual exchange of the gases takes place through them. Then why do we have number 2 and number 3? Very important. Number 2, type 2, they are also known as Clara cells. What are they known as? Clara cells. Type 2, they are also known as Clara cells. Now these type 2 are very important because they produce a surfactant. What is the name of the surfactant? Dipalmitoyl lecithin. Name of the surfactant, dipalmitoyl lecithin. It's a kind of a fat surfactant it is. It keeps the lungs expanded. All right. Have you ever seen a balloon? The balloon that you usually use for your birthday parties, etc. If you have a pack of the balloons and you have not kept them properly, and those balloons were never blown ever, you will see that the walls of the balloon after some months, they stick to each other, and you try to blow them, they just tear apart, right? That's because their walls have stick to each other. Now this should not happen with our lungs. Our lungs are expanding, contracting continuously whenever we are breathing in and breathing out. So if the part of the lungs come very close to each other, they will stick to each other and done. The lungs tear apart. But this does not happen merely because you have type 2 Clara cells. What do type 2 Clara cells do? They produce a surfactant. That surfactant is dipalmitoyl lecithin. It's a kind of a fat, lipid. You will learn about this in the biomolecules. It keeps the lungs expanded, prevent it from sticking to each other. Very important. Though it does not play an important role in exchange of gas, but it keeps the lungs expanded. All right. Many a times, babies, the newborn babies, if these cells are not working when they are born, they are not able to breathe and they don't cry. One of the reason is that their lungs have not expanded. They have never experienced the breathing inside their mother's womb. They are breathing for the first time when they are out of mother's body. So this surfactant, if it's not there, the lungs won't get expanded, and probably then there is a problem. The baby won't then cry. Type 3 pneumocytes are macrophages. Yes, your lungs are, your body is inhaling any type of air. You do not restrict anything that I will only inhale this quality of air and not that quality of air. That much privilege we do not have. So air has number of pollutants, and those pollutants might contain certain harmful germs, bacteria, and these days viruses also. So you have type 3 kind of cells which are macrophages who kill these germs. All right. So once again, we are talking about the sac. This part, its inner lining. Its inner lining is made up of squamous epithelium. There are three: type 1, type 2, type 3. Type 1, they are abundant and they are the one which help in exchange. And yes, that exchange part is diffusion. So type 1 cells help in diffusion. Type 2 keep the lungs expanded because they produce the surfactant dipalmitoyl lecithin. And it's very, very important to keep the lungs expanded in the expanded form. And type 3 are macrophages, right? Now, this is a very delicate kind of arrangement that we have. This has to be protected, and for that protection, you have yellow fibrous connective tissue as an outer covering of this sac. So, if I have to make an outer covering, the outer covering above these cells is going to be yellow fibrous. Again, why yellow fibrous? Because lungs are going to expand and contract, and elastic fibers, yellow fibers are elastic fibers. They have capacity to expand and recoil to their original position. You cannot have white fibrous tissue over here. That's impossible. Otherwise, it's impossible to breathe. And in some of the diseases, these yellow fibrous connective tissue gets converted to white fibrous, which is known as fibrosis. We'll learn about this when we learn about the diseases of the respiratory system. In the next session, probably we will learn about this, right? So, inner lining made up of squamous epithelium, outer lining made up of yellow fibrous connective tissue. Inner lining is simple squamous. It has 3 cells: type 1, type 2, type 3. Type 1, abundant, help in exchange. Type 3, macrophages, kill the germs. And type 2, keep the alveoli or lungs expanded. All right. So this is the sac part, and right below the sac part, can you see a blood capillary? So they are this close, and this is how the exchange actually takes place. Now, in between the two cells, there are certain pores also, which enable or facilitate the process of exchange or enhances the process of exchange also. So these are the squamous epithelium. These are the blood vessels, and blood vessels are lined by again an epithelium. That epithelium is known as endothelium. All right. So actual exchange take place between endothelium and squamous epithelium. Squamous epithelium of the alveolar sac and endothelium of the blood vessel, right? So oxygen is getting in, carbon dioxide is getting out. Is that okay? Any doubt, anything that you have, please do drop it in the chat box. All right. Now, there are about 300 to 350 million alveoli in both the lungs. And if you stretch all the alveoli together, they cover up about 70 to 100 meter square area. So you can imagine how meticulously they are folded inside that in the lungs, so that lungs can expand and contract, and you don't even feel that expansion in your body. So about 300 to 350 million alveoli including both the lungs. And if you look at the total surface area, if you put all the alveoli one after the other, they cover the area of about 70 to 100 meters square. All right. Finally, about the lungs. Lungs are solid, they are spongy, but they are not muscular. Please, they are not muscles. Lungs are what? Lungs are just bronchi, bronchioles, and the cluster of the alveoli. Where are the muscles? Lungs are not muscles. Please don't think that the lungs are expanding and contracting because you have muscles there. No, lungs are not muscles. They are solid, they are spongy, they are just a cluster of bronchioles and alveoli, but there are no muscles. Lungs does not have muscles. Where are they present? Lungs, it's a pair, and it's present in the thoracic cavity. Thoracic cavity is nothing but the chest cavity. The area of the chest is known as thoracic cavity. It's an airtight chamber, my dear friends. Airtight chamber as in the air that's going in and the foul air that's coming out. That's it. Otherwise, there is no gap that the entire chest doesn't get filled up with the air. It's only the alveoli and the lungs which expand. So that chamber has to be airtight. All right. There should not be any puncture. A small puncture in the lungs as a whole might disturb the entire process of breathing and rather impair the breathing. All right. So where are they present? In the thoracic cavity, and it's an airtight chamber. If it's not an airtight chamber, you'll not be able to breathe. All right. Okay. On the dorsal side, if the lungs are present like this, on the back side you have vertebral column. That's fine. On the ventral side, the vertebral column ka one bone that's come on the that's extend in front, that's sternum. So lungs are present. Below the lungs there is vertebral column. In front of the lungs there is sternum. On the lateral side there are ribs. Why am I telling you all this? Because lungs are the vital organs. They have to be protected, right? They are expanding and collapsing back. If any puncture in them, you will not be able to breathe, and no breathe mean a person is no more, right? So lungs have to be protected by bony structures. So what are the three bony structures which are protecting them? On the dorsal side you have vertebral column, on the ventral side you have sternum, and on the lateral side you have the rib cage, right? Sternum, rib cage, vertebral column, and the area in between them is taken over by the lungs. Okay, now the right lungs, a lung has three lobes. The lung has two lobes, and there is a notch also present over here. Let me show you with the help of the diagram. All right, this is the right side of the body, the left side of the body. This is right lung, this is left lung. Right lung, can you see that it is divided into three lobes? This is first lobe, second lobe, third lobe. Superior lobe, middle lobe, inferior lobe. Once again, lung, the right lung is divided into how many lobes? Three lobes. The first part is superior lobe, middle lobe, inferior lobe. All right. So there has to be something that should divide. All right. Now, in biology, if anything that divides, we call it as fissure. We call it as fissure. All right. So now here, can you see this line? This is known as horizontal or transverse fissure. This is known as oblique fissure. And these two fissures divide the lungs into three lobes: superior, middle, inferior. All right. If we move on to the left lung, there are three important peculiar things which are different from the right lung. Left lung has only two lobes: superior lobe, inferior lobe. So it has only one fissure. That's oblique fissure. This fissure is absent. And in the absence of that fissure, there are only two lobes: superior lobe, inferior lobe. Now, why this discrimination with our left lung? Why it doesn't have three lobes? Arey Baba, it's only because the left side of the lung cannot have three lobes. It's only because this area is an area where your heart is tilted. When you say that the heart is present on the left, doesn't mean it is present on the extreme left of your body. Nahin. If you consider this area, your heart is tilted towards the left, right? And for that tilt, this lung has to compromise a bit. So it has a notch. That notch is known as cardiac notch because it has to give space to the heart. It cannot have the third lobe. As simple as that. So the right lung has three lobes. The left lung has two lobes. And left lung also has a notch. That notch is known as cardiac notch. All right. And can you see this gap between the two lungs? This space is known as mediastinum. This is the place where heart is going to come. This is the place where heart will come. All right. And this notch is cardiac notch. Fine. Now, can you see that for lungs, I have drawn two lines, two outlines, 1 and 2. See here also, the inner and the outer. Now, lungs, they are just near the cluster of alveoli and bronchioles. But you cannot have alveoli and bronchioles hanging in your thoracic cavity. It has to be wrapped up in something. That wrapping off of something is known as pleura. So there are two pleural membranes, right? There are two pleural membrane, external, internal, or else we also call it as parietal and visceral pleura. And in between the pleura, there is a gap. Can you see this? This gap has to be filled with some liquid, some fluid has to be there, otherwise they will stick to each other, and then the whole idea of having lungs is gone. All right. So lungs are covered by two membranes. Those two membranes are collectively known as pleura. Parietal pleura, visceral pleura. Between the two pleura, there is a fluid. That fluid is known as pleural fluid. That fluid is known as pleural fluid. All right. It prevents the friction between the two. It prevents the two from sticking to each other and acts as a shock absorber. All right. Now, sometimes this liquid pleural fluid, it increases due to certain condition and creates pressure on the lungs. This condition is known as pleurisy. If there is too much of fluid in the pleura, the condition is known as pleurisy. All right. Okay. Now, just below the lungs, can you see this diaphragm? We had mentioned about the diaphragm in the beginning of this session also. There is a muscular band which is present right below the lungs, that is known as diaphragm. All right. Okay. Right. Now, this is the respiratory tract in the human. How are you going? There are few names which are mentioned in the textbook. And in the NCERT syllabus, those names are mentioned, but there are demarcation. From this level to this level, you call it this. From the other level to the next level, you call it this. All these things should be at one place with you. So you don't have to go through the textbook every time you are looking for these names. All right. So if you are paying attention to the entire session from the beginning, we had started our explanation with the nodes, that is external nares, and we came down to alveolar sac. Now this entire is our respiratory path. This is the path where the air is moving in and the air is moving out. But this part is divided into so many sections. These names are there in the NCERT syllabus. For NEET preparation, you have to be thorough with them. All right. Now, the air first entered into external nares. From there it entered into, yes, nasal passage. From nasal passage into the internal nares. And from internal nares through pharynx, it has entered into larynx. Now this part from external nares to larynx is known as upper respiratory tract. So if a question is asked about the upper respiratory tract and some of the names in the MCQs are given, or maybe could be a multiple choice or could be in the match the column form, you need to remember from external nares till larynx, it is upper respiratory tract. This tract is upper respiratory tract. All right. The air after larynx enter into trachea. From trachea enter into bronchi, primary bronchi, to secondary bronchi, to tertiary bronchi, to pulmonary bronchi, terminal bronchi, and respiratory bronchioles rather. And from there to alveolar duct and alveoli. Now this region or this entire stretch from trachea to alveolar sac is known as lower respiratory tract, right? So from trachea till the air reaches up to alveolar sac, it is known as lower respiratory tract. And I just want to give you one important information that the diseases of the respiratory tract are also divided into two categories: upper respiratory tract, lower respiratory tract. And this so-called pandemic, it attacks lower respiratory tract. All right. So external nares, nasal passage, internal nares, larynx is a part of upper respiratory tract. From trachea to bronchi to all bronchioles and finally to alveoli is lower respiratory tract. All right. Okay. Now can you see here this green mark? From trachea to terminal bronchi, we call it as bronchial tree. Please remember, from trachea to terminal bronchioles, it is known as bronchial tree. All right. Okay. Now, from respiratory bronchi till alveolar sac, we call it as respiratory tree. Right? So, the lower respiratory tract is divided into two forms in that aspect. Trachea to terminal bronchioles, it is called bronchial tree. And the last three parts, which are they? Respiratory bronchioles, alveolar duct, alveolar sac. They are known as respiratory tree. They are also known as exchange part. Why? Because actual exchange takes place over here. All right, the actual exchange takes place over here. This part is just the bronchial part, and the entire part is known as lower respiratory tract. All right. Okay. Now the part from nasal external nares, that is entire upper respiratory tract, and bronchial tree. The upper respiratory tract plus bronchial tree is also known as conducting part. Upper respiratory tract and the bronchial tree, also known as conducting part. Is that okay? Please don't get confused. The names are there in your syllabus. You could be asked questions regarding to it. You have to be really thorough with this passage. Revise this with me once again. External nares to larynx, upper respiratory tract. Trachea to alveoli, lower respiratory tract. Lower respiratory tract is further divided into bronchial tree, respiratory tree. From trachea to terminal bronchi, bronchial tree. From respiratory bronchi to alveolar sac, respiratory tree. All right. And upper respiratory tract and bronchial tree together are also known as conducting part. So if anyone asks you that respiratory bronchioles are the part of conducting part, it's true or false? Write in the chat box. My question is, respiratory bronchioles are part of conducting part. Whether it's true or false, please do mention in the chat box. All right, where does the actual exchange take place? At the level of alveolar sac. So which means respiratory bronchi is not the part of conducting part, it is part of exchange part. All right. Okay. Is this part absolutely clear to you? Anything that you wish to ask, please write that down in the chat box. All right. We are moving towards the conclusive parts, the diaphragm. Okay. Fine. Done. Diaphragm. As you know, diaphragm is the band-like structure that was present below the lungs, right? Remember that diagram? So diaphragm is muscular. What kind of muscles is it made up of? It is made up of radial muscles. Okay? Now one very important aspect. Radial muscles. Can you control your diaphragm? You can control the amount of air that you want to breathe in, right? But you cannot control the diaphragm. When you are listening to something, you are writing, you are not even controlling your breath. You're breathing, I mean, it's just taking place. You are doing no efforts to breathe. Fine. So, diaphragm is muscular. Lungs were not muscular. Diaphragm is muscular. What muscles are they made up of? They are made up of radial muscles. What kind of muscles are radial muscles? They are skeletal muscles. Now try to ponder on the question that I asked. Are you able to control your diaphragm? No, which means they are skeletal but not in your control. So they are unlike skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles are voluntary, you can control them, but here you cannot control diaphragm. Please remember, diaphragm is muscular, made up of radial muscles. What type of muscles are they? Skeletal. Can you control? No. They are skeletal but involuntary. What is the shape of the diaphragm when you're not breathing? It's dome shape. All right. What is the other name of diaphragm? It's known as phrenic. Diaphragm is also known as phrenic. And what does it do apart from the major function? Helps you in breathing. Apart from that, it divides your thoracic cavity, divides your body cavity into two parts: upper thoracic, lower abdomen. So this is how the diaphragm looks like. Above the diaphragm there are lungs, so this cavity is thoracic. Below the diaphragm it's abdominal cavity. So diaphragm is the one that divides your entire body cavity into two: thoracic upper, abdominal lower. Diaphragm is muscular, shape dome shape. What kind of muscles? Radial muscles. Radial muscles are skeletal muscles. Are they under your control? No. Though they are skeletal, but they are involuntary. What is the other name of diaphragm? Phrenic. All right. Okay. What are the major functions of diaphragm? Apart from helping you in breathing, that's one of the most important function. It also helps in micturition. What is micturition? Micturition is another word given to urination, right? So it helps in urination, all right? It helps in defecation, removal of excreta. It also helps in parturition, that is the birth of the baby. So diaphragm, apart from helping you in breathing, it also helps in micturition, that is urination, defecation, and parturition. It also separates your body cavity into upper thoracic cavity, lower abdominal cavity. It is skeletal, involuntary. And what kind of muscles? Radial, skeletal, radial muscles. All right. Okay. We move on to the next. Okay. Now, see, lungs are non-muscular. Still, they are expanding. So something is helping them to expand. One thing that you learned is diaphragm. Diaphragm is dome-shaped. If you press it, it becomes flat and increases the cavity for the lungs to expand. All right. So one major thing was diaphragm. There are other muscles also which actually physically move your rib cage. Those muscles are intercostal muscles. All right. So the lungs, they are protected by 12 pairs of ribs. In between the two ribs, there are two sets of muscles. See, diagrammatically, I'm trying to show you over this. This is the sternum, the chest bone. These are the ribs. I'm showing you two pairs. And the cavity that is formed inside this cavity are the lungs. All right. Now, these are the two ribs, upper rib, lower rib. In between the ribs, there are two sets of muscles. What are the two sets of muscles? Those muscles are known as intercostal muscles. They are known as intercostal muscles. Listen to me absolutely carefully. You are looking at this diagram from the ventral side. Front. From the front you are looking at. You are not looking at from person's back. You are looking at the diagram from the front. So this side is the ventral side. The side of the rib, which is behind this white background, is the dorsal side. That's visible from the back. All right. Now, in the upper rib, there are external intercostal muscles which are connected from the upper rib to the lower rib, or upper rib mein they are connected from the dorsal side. So they are coming from the dorsal side of the upper rib, come in front and get attached to the lower rib. They are coming from the dorsal side of the upper rib. They come over, come to the upper side of the front side of the lower rib and get connected. So these are the two ribs. The muscles are coming from here and getting attached over here. Okay. The muscles are coming from the dorsal side of the rib and attached to the ventral side of the lower rib. Such muscles are known as external intercostal muscles, abbreviated as EICM. External intercostal muscles, abbreviated as EICM. On the other side of this diagram, again, upper rib, lower rib. Now there are muscles which are coming from the lower side of the lower rib, from the back side of the lower rib. They are coming like this and get attached in the front of the upper rib. They are attached to the front of the upper rib. They are coming from the back of the lower rib attached to the front of the upper rib. Such muscles are known as internal intercostal muscles. Such muscles are known as internal intercostal muscles. So there are two muscles. Where are they present? Between the ribs. What are their names? Intercostal muscles. Since there are two, you cannot name them same. You have to name them differently. One we call as external, other we call as internal. Difference between the two. External intercostal muscles. They are coming from the dorsal side of the upper rib, moving and come and attach to the ventral side of the lower rib. So they are coming like this. Alright. On the other hand, internal intercostal muscles, they are coming from the ventral side of the upper rib and go at the dorsal side of the lower rib. Internal intercostals coming from the ventral side of the upper rib and go to the dorsal side of the lower rib. Internal intercostal muscles. Henceforth, we will use these abbreviations. Please remember, external intercostal muscles, internal intercostal muscles. External intercostal muscles, EICM, internal intercostal, IICM. All right. Okay. Now, mechanism of breathing. Breathing has only two steps: inspiration and expiration, inhalation and exhalation, what we call it as, right? Now, here I am trying to show you lungs, and the air is actually moving in. So with the help of the diagram, you are able to understand that the air is flowing in. When something is flowing in, the cavity has to expand. And see, this is the diaphragm. Diaphragm is dome shaped, but it is being pushed down. So what will happen? This dome shaped diaphragm being pushed becomes flat. Dome shaped diaphragm becomes flat. The air is getting in. Alright. This entire process of inspiration is for 2 seconds. It involves the intake of air. It's an active process. Why it's an active process? Muscles are involved, and muscles for their functioning require glucose and oxygen both. Otherwise, they will not contract and relax and expand. Will not be able to expand the thoracic cavity. So since muscles are involved, it's an active process. 80% of inspiration of breathing is due to diaphragm. What happens to diaphragm? Diaphragm contracts, it becomes flat. Please remember this word, anterior-posterior. Diaphragm becomes flat, anterior-posterior. Anterior end, posterior end. So it becomes flat from anterior to posterior end. Now these are the technical terms which are used in the NCERT syllabus also. Please pay attention. The diaphragm becomes anterior-posterior flattened. Alright. So 80% of your breathing is because of contraction of the diaphragm. Remaining 20% is because of external intercostal muscles. Then why do we have internal intercostal muscles? They are not involved in normal inspiration. We are talking about normal breathing. But when you do those count wala breathing, that you take in air, wait for several seconds, hold the breath and exhale the air, there all the muscles are involved. But when you are subconsciously only breathing, you are not paying attention to your breath and you're doing some work and still you're breathing, that breathe we are majorly talking about. So normal breathing condition. So under normal breathing condition, 80% of the breathing is due to diaphragm contraction. Only 20% is due to intercostal muscles. Which intercostal? External intercostal muscles. Which intercostal muscles? External intercostal muscles. What happens to the diaphragm? Diaphragm becomes flat. In which direction? Anterior-posterior direction. Alright. The sternum. Sternum moves upward. Sternum moves upward. And external intercostal muscles contract. Ribcage also moves outward. Ribcage also moves outward. So there are three movements happening. Diaphragm becoming flat, anterior-posterior. Sternum moving upward. Ribcage moving outward. Now, because of all these three things taking place simultaneously, the thoracic cavity has expanded and has allowed the air to get in. Alright. This process is known as inspiration. It's an active process, remember. And it occurs for 2 seconds if it's under the normal condition. Alright. Okay, this is how the air is getting in, and diaphragm is pushed, sternum is moved upward, rib cage is moved outward. Okay, if you have inspired the air, you have to exhale it out. You cannot keep it held for lifetime. That I have kept this much volume of air, I'll keep it there for another 10 years. No, that's not possible. So the inspiration is followed by expiration. It occurs for 3 seconds. Inspiration took for 2 seconds. Expiration takes place for 3 seconds. You have to just contrast the boxes. Expiration is just the removal of air. That was an active process because muscles were contracting. Now muscles have contracted. Now you do not require ATP. Muscles will relax automatically. That is why this process is a passive process. So expiration is a passive process. All right. Forced expiration. When you are forcefully expelling the air out of your thoracic cavity, at that time internal intercostal muscles are involved. Otherwise, they are not majorly involved. All right. So when you are force expiring, then only IICM, internal intercostal muscles, come into picture. Otherwise, not. All right. Okay. Here diaphragm relaxes. So from flat, it becomes dome shaped again. Sternum, which was upward, moves downward. Rib cage moves inward. So all the three things have moved back to their normal places, reducing the cavity, and thus the air moves out. Right? So expiration is of 3 seconds. It's just the removal of air. Here, since under the normal conditions, muscles are coming back to their normal place. So it's a passive process. It does not require any energy. Under the normal breathing condition I'm talking about. But if it's a forced expiration, then it's active. And which muscles, extra muscles are involved? IICM, which were not involved in inspiration. In inspiration, only 2 muscles were involved, diaphragm and external intercostal muscles. Whereas for expiration, if at all it is a forced expiration, internal intercostal muscles are also involved, otherwise not. Under normal condition, no muscles are involved. Diaphragm relaxes and becomes dome shaped. Sternum moves downward. Rib cage moves inward. Reducing the cavity, the air moves out. These names, they are asked in the examination. Always remember, NEA, this word NEA stands for breath or something related to the normal condition, normal breathing. So eupnea is normal breathing. It's a normal breath. If a person is not having any particular condition, he is not exercising, relaxing, he is just sitting ideally normally, then the normal breath rate should be between 12 to 16, and if it is there, it is eupnea. Right? Suppose due to certain condition the breath rate decreases. Now this decrease in breath rate has a biological term. It is known as hypopnea. It is known as hypopnea. Alright. Also known as bradypnea. Hypo, less. As I told you, pnea means normal breath rate. Hypo means lower breath rate. Bradypnea is also lower breath rate. If due to certain condition there is increase in the breath rate, it is known as hyperpnea. If due to certain physiological conditions, if there is increase in the breath rate, or it could be felt when the person is exercising, climbing mountain or something, climbing the stairs also, then you feel that your breath rate has increased. That is known as hyperpnea, because your body now wants more oxygen, more air. All right. Biologically also known as trachypnea. All right. It's increase in breath rate. Dyspnea, breathing difficulty. If a person has difficulty while breathing, if the expansion and the contraction of the lungs is not taking place the way it should, it is known as dyspnea. And finally, asphyxia. That is, asphyxia is suffocation due to increased carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide content in the body has increased so much that it has caused the suffocation. All right. So asphyxia, either a person is not has no access to the oxygen, and so the carbon dioxide level has increased, or could be he is climbing up the mountain, and as you go higher on the higher altitudes, the amount of oxygen decreases, can cause asphyxia, right? I would like to mention one very important thing over here, that in this particular box you can see that the newborn has increased breath rate, whereas an adult has a normal 12 to 16. Always remember that breath rate is inversely proportional to the body size as far as homothermals are considered, warm-blooded animals. In case of warm-blooded animals, more is the body size, less is the breath rate. So if I ask you who has the higher breath rate, elephant or a rat, what would be your answer? Give your answer in the chat box. Remember, breath rate is inversely proportional to the body size. More is the body size, less is the breath rate. So elephant or rat, who will have increased breath rate? Yes, and the answer is rat, for sure. Small body size, more breath rate. More body size, small breath rate or less breath rate. All right. Okay, and that is why you find a difference over here. Newborn has more breath rate, adults have less breath rate. All right. So we have come to the conclusive part, thoracic breathing and abdominal breathing. We have learned so much about breathing, and now you must be thinking, thoracic breathing is seen in women, right? So thoracic breathing is due to 75% due to lateral movement of thorax. Thorax, the chest cavity, it moves very evidently, whereas abdomen doesn't move that much. It's because of obvious reasons, because women might be pregnant, and in the pregnancy it's not possible to move the abdomen, but the thoracic cavity can move and show that the person is breathing. So the lateral movement of thorax is 75%, but the abdominal movement is only 25%. So when you are looking at the person, thorax movement are very evident. That's in case of women. They cannot have abdominal movement because women can be pregnant, and in pregnancy it's not possible to have abdominal movement. In case of males, they show abdominal breathing. Looking at the males while breathing, their abdomen moves very evidently, but the chest cavity, thorax doesn't move that much. So 25% movement is only because of thorax, whereas 75% is because of abdominal movement. This is commonly seen in men. It's nothing, just by looking at the person. For females, they show thoracic breathing. The chest cavity moves, abdomen doesn't move. In case of males, abdomen shows evident movement, but the chest cavity doesn't show much movement. It's because in case of thoracic breathing, it's 75% due to thorax, 25% due to abdominal movement seen in women. In case of abdominal breathing, 25% due to thorax, 75% due to abdominal movement seen in men. All right. So with this, I conclude this part of human respiratory system. We have done the anatomy part. In the next session, we are going to learn about what actually exchange takes place, how it takes place, and believe me, it's going to be super easy. At the same time, you are going to go through a roller coaster, and you will understand that, oh my god, all these exchange which just look like that we are breathing in and taking in oxygen and removing carbon dioxide, how does it take place? There are molecules which flip, shift, break, make it possible for you to take in oxygen and remove carbon dioxide, and to provide that oxygen to its final destination, that is cell. So it's very interesting part which is coming in our next session. So I conclude this topic. I hope you like this lecture of mine. For more such sessions, tune into these videos. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Share maximum with your friends so that they can also be part of this learning process. You can also download the app and be part of the educator app also. You can learn lectures there also. You can use this code of mine, NAMYT, to get. And please do press the bell icon so that you get notified next time when I'm online. All right. Take care, dear students. Learn well, eat well, and plan your studies. All right, it was really nice having this session with you. I hope you really enjoyed with me. Thank you so much.